Okay, Brian. Well, let's jump right in here. A little more technical subject matter for our professional estheticians and other applicators in our audience. The little things make a difference, and I guess that really we're talking about some of the characteristics of a microdermabrasion machine and the setup, and take us through it.
Sure. If you're making your living doing a job, you want your tool to work for you, not against you. So, like many things in life, it can be the little things that do make the big difference. They're not always obvious until you put the tool to test. And that goes for microdermabrasion as well. So when you're shopping for a microdermabrasion device, it's best to go into it informed so that you end up with the right tool for the job. One of the first things to consider is the size and shape of the device. Many people are going to look for tabletop units, thinking that they're going to be highly portable and they'll be able to move around between treatment rooms or take them with them. In reality, a quality microdermabrasion device is going to weigh at least 30 pounds and up to 50, 60 pounds. So even in a tabletop model, it's unrealistic to think that they're going to be portable. So you may consider on the higher end devices, a device with wheels or a device that can be placed on a cart so that you can move it out of the way or between treatment rooms when you need it.
So in the case where, there may be a technical setup with a tabletop and maybe not as much floor space or just a preference for tabletop, what would be the typical weight or characteristics of that machine that would be acceptable for a professional application?
Again, most microdermabrasion devices with a professional level compressor in them are going to weigh a minimum of 30 pounds. So you be prepared to have a fairly large device in your office.
Got it. Okay. What would be the next consideration point here?
Well, other things you might consider is that most of your treatments you're doing in gloved hands. If you look at a lot of the devices on the marketplace, you see teeny tiny little knobs that you might grab with a fingertip if you can reach it. I think one of the things that differentiates what I would consider quality devices from not so would be those tiny valves. Look for knobs. Look for large diameter knobs that can be easily manipulated with gloved hands.
Got it. Okay. Well, and I know you mentioned previously, we know the importance of crystals and the different types of crystals, but crystal flow and the controls are important as well. Is that a part of this characteristic of the small things?
It is actually. Crystal flow is very important to microdermabrasion, and being able to adjust the crystal flow precisely is very important as well. So the larger the knob, the more control you'd have. You have smaller movements of the knob to make those adjustments. Crystal flow is kind of counterintuitive, actually. You would think that more crystal flow or more abrasives going across the skin would normally create a more aggressive procedure. But in actuality, in many cases, increasing the crystal flow will make it a less irritating procedure, and the crystals will move a little more slowly across the skin. So crystal flow is very important. Yes, Eric, tubing does make a difference, but it's not really a performance-oriented issue, except in very extreme cases. I've seen some tiny little tubing on these devices, but most quality microdermabrasion devices are going to use a size of tubing that'll perform an adequate treatment. But where tubing really does make a difference in these little things is what the tubing is made out of. Most of the low-end microdermabrator units on the marketplace actually use vinyl tubing. It looks clear. It's used for water and all kinds of uses out there in the marketplace. But vinyl tubing is relatively soft. And as we've talked about, these aluminum oxide crystals are extremely abrasive. So anytime that vinyl tubing turns a corner, those crystals are going to actually wear on the tubing. They use it because vinyl tubing is very, very cheap. Quality microdermabrasion devices actually incorporate polyurethane tubing. Polyurethane is the same material that they make rollerblade wheels out of, and for real harsh environments. And one of the key constraints you want to look at on a machine is to make sure it has polyurethane tubing. You know of the tubing in the handpiece. That's 5 or 6 feet of tubing you see every day. What you don't realize is that these microdermabrators have a ton of tubing on the inside of them as well. And if that's vinyl tubing, it's going to wear out, and your machine's going to become an expensive doorstop.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. Apologies, folks, for taking us down that road that wasn't quite right, but that's very helpful for me too. So anything else that we should be considering as it relates to the small things?
Sure, I think there's some other things you want to look out for. Gauges. You know, one of the most important indicators in a microdermabrasion device is the vacuum gauge. And again, most microdermabrators you're familiar with will have a little circular gauge on them, about 2 inches in diameter. They're usually analog gauges. They have a little needle that goes up and down. Well, the vacuum that you use on your procedures is very, very important. It dictates the performance of the procedure, what the intensity and any pain level that your client might be experiencing. So you really want to know what those vacuum levels are at all times. You want to know what the vacuum level is when you start the procedure, and as the handpiece moves across the skin, that vacuum reading will generally rise, and you want to know what that is at the end of the day too. So the larger the vacuum gauge in general, the more functional the device is going to be, so you can see it. You can also differentiate whether it's 5 or 6 or 7 inches of mercury on the vacuum gauge. Another key thing for high-end units would be a backlit or a lit vacuum gauge. A lot of times you're doing these procedures and your lighting isn't ideal, and you really want to be able to read that gauge very clearly.
Got it. So, from an engineering standpoint, you've obviously looked at a lot of different devices in the market. You've manufactured our Dermaglow devices now for a long time. Can you take us through just how we at Dermaglow constructed our machine against some of the other options out there?
Well, sure. The Dermaglow was engineered and is built for the professional esthetician. So we use very high-end components, quality to make it a quality device. As mentioned, the Dermaglow is a little bigger than many units on the market, but that's primarily because it's on wheels, and we want the controls to be at a convenient height for the operator sitting in a chair next to a client. The Dermaglow uses digital backlit gauges so that they can be easily seen from a distance or in low light environments. So that allows you to have much more control of the performance of the device. The Dermaglow uses a separate crystal flow knob, and as I mentioned in earlier videos, our DermaVortex vacuum system that actually allows crystals to flow more uniformly through the airflow, even at lower vacuum levels, so that you can use the device on more sensitive areas of the body. The Dermaglow comes with oversized knobs, the intensity control knobs, 2.5 inches around, almost the size of a can of beans, so that you can use it in gloved hands. And of course, we use polyurethane tubing throughout the device, so that we never have to worry about the tubing failing. One interesting thing to note that we didn't get to on microdermabrasion machines, the interface between the handpiece tubing and the machine is one of the most critical components of a microdermabrasion device. You think about those crystals, those hard abrasive crystals are running down the tube, and they need to go inside the machine somehow. Well, many of the lower end machines will just have a barb or a piece of metal that the tubing interface is there. And as those crystals interface impact that little tube there, it wears them down. High quality microdermabrasion devices use field replaceable parts in all the different areas that can be worn down, so that when the machine fails, you don't have to send it back into us for repair. We can just send you one of our little quick release fittings, and you can pop it in and you're good to go. In the Dermaglow's case, that only needs to be replaced about every 150 hours.
Got it. Well, that's fantastic. So how many little replacement field parts does one have to consider then? There's the knobs, other fittings. What components are there? Is there just a little punch list that we could have people be watching for or looking out for as they work with the machine?
Well, that really depends on the device. On your standard microdermabrasion device, you might see there on the marketplace with the little tiny clean and waste crystal canisters. You're going to have many seals. You're going to have caps with threads that you need to unscrew to pour the crystals in and unscrew to let the crystals come out. Anything with a thread on a microdermabrasion device is a disaster waiting to happen, because the crystals will wear those threads. Crystals migrate everywhere, and they'll wear those threads down over time. Generically, on a microdermabrasion device, usually you have handpiece tips that are disposable. You'll have the handpiece itself is going to wear down depending on how it's engineered in the Dermaglow. We have an aluminum handpiece that has a very hard carbide steel insert in it to accelerate the crystals that doesn't wear nearly as fast as aluminum would. But even the handpiece needs to be replaced about every 200 hours or 600 procedures. Handpiece tubing, polyurethane really won't wear out, but it can discolor over time. You may want to replace that. And then with any microdermabrasion device, there's going to be filters, because you're sucking these crystals back towards the pump, and you need redundancy to keep the in filters to keep it from going towards the pump. So in the Dermaglow, our vacuum bag, the waste crystal canister, which is a HEPA bag, becomes the primary filter for the device. So every time you put in a new bottle of crystals, you take out a full bag of waste crystals, you throw them away, you're actually replacing that primary filter.
Got it. Well, that's it's not a no maintenance setup, it's a low maintenance setup, and I guess that's about the best you can get anywhere, right?
Absolutely. Your time is better spent with your clients making money than maintaining your device. So it's very important to look at those little things and buy the right device.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for this great information today, Brian. We hope this was useful to everybody. Don't forget to like and comment, for future programming, and let us know what you think. Always appreciate it. Thanks again, folks. Bye for now.